Good morning, honorable members. Maybe just to say we're going to start in a few minutes. I've been informed that we're just waiting on IT to give us a go-ahead that they've resolved problems relating to projection. I don't know if the coffee is ready outside. Maybe we could, is it ready, Hajira? Maybe in the meantime, we can just get copies and I'm sure we'll start in less than 5 minutes. Apologies for that delay. Thanks. Good morning once again. Thank you so much for your patience. I'm told that the problem has now been resolved. Let me greet everybody in the room, the honorable members present, Deputy Minister Gungubele, Deputy Minister Gina, the leadership of the two departments, Communications and Digital Technologies, as well as Science, Technology and Innovation. I also see in the room leadership from the entities. Everybody who is present, you are welcomed. Maybe just to introduce myself, because this is a joint committee meeting. My name is Kusela Sangoni-Digo. I'm the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies. I think I'll afford an opportunity to members of the committee to also introduce themselves. Maybe let me do that right now. Also, we'll then hand over to my co-chair, maybe for a few opening remarks and to introduce science and technology as well. Hello, DM Gungubel. Can I ask the members of the Portfolio Committee on Communications to introduce themselves? Thanks.
Sawubona siyabonga sihlalo. Igama lami ukhetha amabala kwaSithole. Kwilunga leCommittee la kwa Communication and Digital kona lokho ke. Ngiyabonga.
Sanbona, my name is Sboniseni Vilagazi, a member of the committee.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, colleagues. I am Tsolofelo Botlani, member of the Portfolio Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies.
Thank you very much. I'd seen Honorable Mkhacha outside. When he comes back, I will ask him to also just introduce himself. Co-chair.
Greetings, Chair, and greetings to the colleagues, the DM, both DMs, DM Gina and DM Gungubele. Special greetings, DM Gungubele. I saw you raising your hand. I tried to raise my hand back. Greetings to members of the Portfolio Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies and the Portfolio Committee on Science, Technology and Innovation. My name is Tsakan Shiviti. I'm the chair of Science, Technology and Innovation. I know last time, Chair, we met online. So the first time we met was on a virtual platform. So it's good to see each other today with all of you. I would also afford the Portfolio Committee on Science, Technology and Innovation members to introduce themselves. We will start here with you, Honorable Ramunga.
Good morning, colleagues. I am Tumelo Ramangalo, and I'm a member of the Science Portfolio Committee.
Good morning, chairs, colleagues, DMs. My name is Natasha Matsone, and I'm a member of the Committee on DSTI. DM Ngubele, special good morning to you.
Good morning, honorable members. My name is Tim Ngosi Mjato. I'm a member of this portfolio committee. Thank you.
We also had Honorable Nchunu and Honorable Tembokwayo. I think they are still going to come in. And DM Gin, special greetings to you because I see your shine is taken there by communications.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, honorable members. I think maybe let's get into the business of the day. The notice of the meeting, the agenda is projected on screen. Through you, Chair, allow me to just apologize, I think, to some of the stakeholders of communications. There was an item on the initial notice that had been placed, which was not the business of a joint committee meeting. So for those who have traveled with the hope that that item is on the agenda, our sincere apologies. Today we are dealing, first item on the agenda is the adoption of minutes. These are from the last joint meeting of the committees on the 20th of November. And then we only have one item on the agenda, which is the progress update from DCDT and DSTI on the National SATCOM Space Program. So those will be the items on the agenda. I'm going to request a mover for the adoption of the agenda and thereafter just take apologies if we have any. May I have a mover? This is going to be a short meeting, colleagues, I promise. Thank you, Honorable Matsoni. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Honorable Sitole. So the agenda is duly noted. Can we check if we have any apologies for today's meeting?
Good morning, Chairperson. We have an apology for the Minister. And then in terms of members, we have an apology for Mr. Subrati, Mr. Shongwe, and Ms. Kalise from EFF. And Ms. Makobeli will be 30 minutes late, Chairperson.
You, so the apologies, Minister Solimalati, Honorable Subrathi, Honorable Shongwe, Honorable Elisha, and Honorable Makubela will join us 30 minutes late. May I check apologies, Science and Technology?
Good morning, Chairpersons. So our apologies we received was from the Minister. He's attending a Cabinet Committee meeting this morning. Our department is represented today by Acting Director General, Mr. Tanda Tui. Ms. Zwani is on leave. From the member side, we had an apology from Ms. Sapo, who's attending another committee. And then Mr. Nkosi is running a bit late, so he'll join the meeting a bit late. Thank you, Chair. Those are the apologies from our side.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Apologies noted, Chairperson.
We remember our first meeting, we had agreed that we are going to meet again after each and every 3 months to take a progress report on the work that is being done. Before we start on the progress report, we are going to take the minutes of the previous meeting so that we proceed with the progress report. Can the presenter assist us with the minutes?
Okay, Chairperson, the minutes 20th November is on the screen. Thank you. I'll take it page by page, Chairperson. Page 2. Page 3, members.
You can just highlight and then.
We are on observations and recommendations now, Chairperson. Oh, I need to speak to it. We are on observations and recommendations. Should I read everything, Chair? The committee's deliberated, the committee's noted. There's appreciation for the presentation made. Second item on the agenda, second item on the observation that there was strategy was not inclusive of the implementation plan, which will be developed upon the finalization of the strategy. Would you want me to read everything?
Sorry, we can't hear you, Hajira. Are you able to pull the mic closer?
And now, members?
Still not.
Still
Can I
not.
try and see if you can.
Okay. Third item, the presentation was a high-level version of the strategy. On item 4, that the project has brought excitement and the magnitude of such an investment will be beneficial to the country. On item 5, with concern that the project had many challenges and questioned whether it would be implemented and whether there are measures in place to ensure that the project will materialize. With serious concern that the procurement of satellite from foreign countries poses a risk to national strategy. The next item, with serious concern that South Africa spends approximately 30 billion per annum to procure communication services from foreign service providers, whereas the capital cost of a locally owned telecommunication satellite with a lifespan of 20 years would be around 6 billion. Next item, with concern that projects are often halted due to lack of funding, mismanagement, and poor planning. Next item, with concern about the underfunding of departments that have such big responsibilities, that issues pertaining to service and maintenance of satellite should be prioritized. With concern that the delays in the implementation of the satellite strategy seem to be due to the lack of political will. With concern that South Africa, in all its capacity, is surpassed by countries with lesser economic prowess. That ICASA has established a notice for consultation on the license of satellite operators. With great concern that the analog switch-off has not been finalized. With concern that the unresponsiveness of other departments that were consulted, such as the Department of Transport. The important role of the portfolio committees in monitoring and receiving regular updates on the project as an oversight mechanism. That once implemented, the project would contribute to improving the country's global innovation ranking. Apologies. I think I've missed something here now. With concern about the potential risk of sabotage for this investment. With concern of the New Dawn satellite only orbited for 3 years despite an investment of over 6 billion. That an orbital slot is provided on the first come, first served basis, and that the ITU prefix had to be followed. This process can take up to 7 years to complete, as there are many regulatory provisions to follow in this regard. Overwhelming support to ensure the success of the project, noting that it has yet to be approved by the executive, and that the funding risks are subject to cabinet approval, and thereafter full-scale implementation would commence. So that's the observations, and here comes the recommendations, members. In future, the consultation should happen at a higher echelon of leadership from departments, that the departments be aware of the risks of sabotage of the sovereign of the Republic, that government must be deliberate in building South Africa's sovereign capabilities in the wake of the geopolitical tensions, that the relevant departments ensure that the service and maintenance of satellite are upheld, that further joint meetings between 2 portfolio committees are scheduled, as mentioned earlier, that the committees jointly establish ways to track the progress on this matter and get regular updates on the project in the form of quarterly meetings, that the relevant departments implement the funding model to ensure the success of the program. There should be better articulation of risk mitigation, especially related to security, that the departments to undertake vigorous risk management strategies, that the department assess the return on investment and its impact on the South African economy, that there be instituted a collaborative monitoring and collaboration strategy between the 2 portfolios. One committee should be established to drive the process and create a plan to process ahead, that the issue of skills gap and the relevant skills plan be elevated, Measures are put in place to prevent the risk of sabotage of the project. Concerns of the program management and funding issues be resolved. The lead departments foster more collaboration with government departments. The department ensure adequate taxation of all satellite service providers and to ensure that protection of local markets. The department ensure that the project benefits the most rural of South African communities and that economic and employment opportunities should be prioritized and measured. The departments ensure that the country is not over-indebted because of the launch of the project, and that the departments develop and present a comprehensive business plan. The departments involve local businesses and SMMEs in the project, and that and to strengthen SADC and other regions regarding South Africa's infrastructure value add and revenue deriving. And the committee urges department to fast track the projects as it is of national importance. Thank you so much, members.
Thank you so much for, can we have a mover for adoption of the minutes? If there are no additions.
I move, Chair.
Seconder,
I second, Chair.
thank you so much. I'll hand over to the co-chair to deal with the next item.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. I think we've come really to the essence of the meeting, which is the progress update. Maybe the minutes do remind us, but maybe just to indicate that right from the beginning when we embarked on this process, it was really around ensuring how do we firstly as a country expand access to connectivity in all areas of the country, including the most rural parts of our country. The second issue was around ensuring that there is greater self-determination, for lack of a better word, by South Africa in terms of our space program, where in the initial meeting we're given a presentation that spoke to the fact that all of the satellite services that they currently uses, whether it's for broadcast or any other purpose, are not owned, they are not local to South Africa. So those were some of the issues that we were trying to respond to. But I do think also the issue of a massive infrastructure build program, such as a project of this nature, becomes imperative as one of the drives as the country seeks to grow the economy and obviously foster inclusive growth in the process. So I'm really just trying to frame why the committees felt it was important that we need to keep an eye on this, and we need to ensure that on a quarterly basis, we're able to get feedback in terms of the process, progress that has been made. I do think that perhaps we should have reached out, Chairperson, to the other departments, particularly the Department of Transport or Portfolio Committee on Transport, on issues related to aviation and maritime, but also the Department of Defense on security issues. And maybe that is one of the recommendations we can take moving forward. Deputy Ministers, thank you for leading the departments today. Could I ask that perhaps you just, create the context in terms of where you are, where you're going, and then you will also direct in terms of presentation. Thank you very much. May I start with you, Deputy Minister Kungubele?
Thank you, Honorable Chair and co-chairs, honorable members. Thanks for the opportunity. Well, knowing that this is a follow-up session, we are very comfortable to have responded to actually come with a team that will assist in demonstrating whether indeed we are on course. in ensuring that as a country we self-determine in as far as this equipment is concerned. I remember very well that this was the very much concern that no country can self-respect, especially at our level, which is not demonstrating intention to organize itself to make sure that over and above partnerships that you've got your own equipment. Having said that, I know DGs are here. They will actually present with regard to where we are, but I'm not sure if my colleague wants to say anything. Dear.
Thank you very much, chairpersons, and good morning to my colleague here. Good morning, honorable members. Good morning to our good officials that are here that are going to be leading us on the presentations. Also from the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation. For us, really, this is one opportunity that we are quite grateful for. It's one platform really where we say it is going to give us an opportunity to look at the challenges that we are faced with as a country. But as we have correctly put it, Chair, it's not for the first time we discuss this and we are moving forward to it, is to say how vulnerable we are as a country if we don't own these satellites. Can you imagine really looking at, if I'm saying vulnerable, it means as a country, at any time within a wink of an eye, someone can decide to switch off whatever he wants to switch off and we are found wanting. But also, if we are serious about closing the gap, the digital gap between our rural, the urban, and wanting to reach each and every corner, this is the right platform and the right track that we are starting to begin to discuss the strategy that we are involved in now. And what we are saying as the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation, this should be really a discussion that should not even end with these two departments moving forward. Yes, it's good, we must initiate and start the discussion, but as we are saying, it's one discussion that when we talk to this strategy, that it's going to be the center where the whole government, the whole country needs to plug in. I know the presentation, as we're going to be continuing, we're going to be looking at the whole issue of funding. It's quite huge, but looking at the importance of the strategy that we're here to discuss about, it's one strategy where really being led by you, our chairpersons, there, we strongly believe that it needs to be elevated, really elevated to whatever highest level of our country, where we can see each and every department plugging in as to say, how do we make sure that such a strategy comes into fruition, because it's going to benefit each and everyone, and it's going to make sure that when it comes to the defense, to the security of the country, economically, the safety, in every aspect, we are going to be benefiting of the country. So we are looking forward to the discussions and the presentations that are going to be taking place here. And then we decide as to say, how do we move forward for the benefit of our country? Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thanks
Thank you.
Dear, but what
Brainwave.
as we forward it, I thought it is important to say something. You know my passion about this. Fidel Castro was once said, if you think it is costly, education is costly, look at the cost of not having it. If you think it is costly to pay for connectivity in the modern era, you must analyze the cost of the absence of connectivity. So everything we do when we talk funding, that's the question you must answer. I'm not sure if we should hand over to TG.
Yes, we can hand over to the DG and the acting DG.
yes.
Maybe just to commend them. I think one of the issues that we can see have been taken to heart was when we asked for greater collaboration between the two departments. I think in the last meeting, we had received two separate presentations which almost said the same thing. So we do acknowledge and appreciate that you have seemed to have a little bit more tunadering on this one. DG, Acting DG, over to you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. A very good morning to the Honorable Co-Chair from Science and Innovation, as well as to the Honorable members present, to the Deputy Ministers, and to my fellow colleagues. My name is Nonkubela Jordan Gyani. I am the Director General at the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies. I'm also joined by an old-time colleague of mine, Dan Dudoy. He's the acting DG from Science and Technology. We go way back over 20 years. So now and again, when you see each other smiling and winking, Chair, you will know. Just to indicate that the presentation, Chair, and I want to agree that we have been collaborating and working with the Department of Science and Innovation. Obviously, we are cross-cutting mandates stemming from the issues with regards to outer space, issues related to even the spectrum, issues related to technology for both communications as well as for the environment. So we do a lot of collaboration, both nationally as well as within the international spheres. I'm going to, with your permission, introduce the team from the Department of Communications before I hand over to my co-DG. On my left-hand side, we have Mr. DDG Dinikongobeni. And then I also would like to also recognize DDG Omega Shelembe. And then we also have from the department who's then leading on issues of satellite, Mr. Peter Mello. And then I also have also another expert on radio communications, Mr. Rendani Mutsetla. And then, Chair, also in the presence, we have the two CEOs from our entities. We have the CEO from Santec, which is our state signal distributor, Mr. Tebukole Shope. And then lastly, we also have Mr. Gift Zoa, the CEO of Broadband Infraco. We brought the entire contingency as far as connecting the country this morning, Chair. Just to give you the assurance that from our side, we're not only looking at the connectivity in its entire ecosystem and landscape, but we're also ensuring the imperatives from a country's perspective, from a socioeconomic, ensuring that no one is left behind and everyone is connected at an affordable pace as well, and we're also ensuring universal access and services. The second issue is also ensuring that as a nation, we then uphold our sovereignty, which the presentation will touch on that. And then lastly, I think the issues with regards to, we cannot avoid the fact that ICTs now are very critical infrastructure for the country. So the issues related to security are also of significance. So with that, I'd like to hand over to DG Science and Technologies. Thanks.
Thank you very much, DG. Good morning, honorable chairs, honorable members, honorable deputy ministers. Indeed, as the deputy minister said, and my colleague from DCDT said, and as we presented to the members of this committee before, we're only going to harness the full and exciting potential of science, technology, and innovation to make a difference in improving the quality of lives of all South Africans if we work in partnership. And certainly that applies to the DSTI. We cannot work in isolation, in silos, and therefore we put a great emphasis on partnerships, starting with partnerships with sister departments. And we have a long and productive history of collaboration with the DCDT. That indeed, as the honorable members will recall, is one of the key tenets, it's one of the key focus areas of our decadal plan for science, technology and innovation, which we have presented here, where it always emphasizes it's not a plan of the DSTI, it's a plan for all of South Africa. And indeed, within that plan, we put a strategic focus on investment in South Africa's space, science, technology and innovation capabilities to support the growth of our digital economy, to support the improvement of service delivery to our citizens, and indeed to just enhance the capabilities of our state. And that's indeed the focus of the presentation here today. Also, as emphasized, we believe these investments are critical for protecting our national sovereignty. It's very critical, as the members of the committee earlier also highlighted, for us to build in Africa's own capabilities. And these efforts, of course, contribute to a bigger African effort. And we are therefore very privileged to enjoy this collaboration with DCDT. And these honorable members, in the spirit of this collaboration, there will not be two presentations. There will just be the presentation from the DCDT, which we will be supporting. I'm joined by two of my colleagues, Mr. Konanane Rashamuse, who is the acting DDG for Technology Innovation, and Mr. Itumeleng Makoloi, who is the acting Chief Director responsible for Space Science and Technology. Back to you, DG.
Shine, they are here. Thank you very much, DG. Maybe if we could just move, Peter, I'll just give the background context and then I'll hand over to you. I think we all understand the purpose of why we are here, just to appraise the Joint Portfolio Committee with regards to the development of the National Satellite Communication Strategy. The next slide, I just want to basically quickly give within the context. So, honorable members, in 2015, we had taken to Cabinet a memorandum just requesting for an extension with regards to the International Telecommunications Satellite Organization and the amendments to that particular act. ITSO is, as I said, it's an international organization under the UN that basically provides universal satellite and orbital slots to member countries. And the idea is that if you're then maximizing with regards to the economics of scale, we would then be able to have more reach and at more affordable pace. But the biggest concern that the Cabinet had then was precisely what I said in the intro, was to then say, as a country, where is your sovereignty in the midst of these satellite operators? Firstly, most of them operate within the upper north. Where then do you have the control with regards to how you control the information? How do you ensure that it is not used for other intentions? As you would know by now that, I mean, basically the power with regards to the satellite, that it can be able to have much more geo footprint beyond even what it was intended for. So then we were tasked to then say that we need to have our own national satellite strategy, as well as the satellite for communications purposes as a sovereign nation. That was, as I said, way back in 2015 and 2016. And where we're at today, as you would see, there is obviously quite a number of these satellite operators globally, but South Africa still sits not having its own independent national communication satellite. And obviously what then that means is that we continuously have to rely on external parties for information purposes. It's the very same for us. From the department, we use this for broadcasting purposes. We use it for connecting citizens, but there's also then the dependencies from the other sectors as well, especially for our justice cluster, where then there will be much use for it from a defense perspective. And we needed, therefore, that we were called to ask that we need to go beyond than just the broadband connectivity and ensuring that we have then this sovereignty from a satellite perspective. So I'd like to hand over then to Mr. Peter Mello to then take us through the presentation, contextualizing why then we are here today. Thank you.
No, thank you, DG.
Good morning, honorable chairs, honorable members, deputy ministers, the DGs and the colleagues. My name is Tinyiko Ngobeni. I'll do the presentation on behalf of the two departments. After the last meeting, we were pained very much by the concerns raised by the committee about the apparent lack of collaboration. And we took that to heart. And we really made sure that we engaged regularly. And as you can see today, I'm sandwiched between the two DGs so to really emphasize that collaboration. I'll take you through the updates that have happened since the last joint committee meeting. But we felt it was necessary just to recap on some of the issues that will have been presented during the last meeting. If you go to the next slide. Just looking at reminding ourselves of what's the importance of South Africa having a satellite strategy. We do understand there is a digital divide which satellite can assist us as a country. And it's because in some areas, it's very costly to provide connectivity. Yet we have an objective to ensure that everyone is covered. So in terms of the satellite strategy, we will ensure that it assists us in achieving our education and health connectivity objectives, particularly in those remote rural areas. And we also aiming that it should contribute to reduction of cost to communicate due to the high cost of deploying high-speed connectivity in some of the areas. But besides those benefits, we believe that having a satellite strategy, it also galvanizes support from the different stakeholders across the entire value chain, which then will be contributing to economic growth and will also lead to creation of new industries and across the entire ecosystem. So once we have this satellite strategy available to us, it's going to help us really to be focused as a country. But also the other issue which was raised by the committee was the issue of skills, because having to have satellite technical skills, we need to be able then to have to deploy those or develop those skills across the various parts of the sectors. But this also helped us to achieve the NDP targets and goals of having everyone connected by 2030. Next slide. Just by way of recapping on the problem statement that we need to bridge that digital divide, particularly in the rural areas. We need to also stimulate economic growth that's inclusive, that we allow other people to participate and also achieve our digital inclusion objectives. And we also need to contribute to the reduction of cost of connectivity and consuming digital services and products. And also to help us achieve other national priorities, particularly priorities such as security considerations by having our own satellite as a country. Can move to the next slide. So after the joint committee meeting, we have made some progress in trying to finalize the strategy. We went back, engaged as a team, and also further engaged with the presidency to also reissue the socio-economic impact assessment, which when we presented at that meeting was about to expire. Then we were able to provide the necessary documentation, and that was granted. And that enabled us to also proceed to the economic cluster. However, before we went to the economic cluster, we further engaged with the ministry to get additional input to guide us and take into consideration the input that was received from the committee. And those were then incorporated in the strategy that was taken to the economic cluster of the DGs, where you've got all the departments in the economic cluster, including the Department of Science, Department of Transport, for example, who participate there. The DGs After reviewing the strategy, it was recommended that it can proceed to cabinet, so that cabinet can consider it for approval, that it can be published for public consultation. There was also consideration that, and I think the chair did mention to the issues of security, so that we could have other departments in the security class, including the Department of Defense, have view of this strategy, that we also consult the JCPS cluster of the DGs. That was done. We presented to the cluster. We had wanted to go earlier. However, due to the government program at the beginning of the year, focusing on the zone and the budget, we're only able to gain a slot at the beginning of this month. The strategy was presented and adopted by the JCPS cluster of DGs, and it was also recommended for the submission to cabinet. At this stage, we are planning to go to cabinet so that cabinet can review it, and if approved, then we'll be able to publish it for public consultation. It has been submitted internally, just awaiting for indication from the parliamentary secretariat when it can be presented to cabinet. Can we move the next slide? Here we're just highlighting some of the input. We just extracted those input from the ministry, which we also addressing the issues raised during the Joint Portfolio Committee, the issues of strengthening our SWOT analysis, and also looking further in terms of the funding options. And in order to also review the implementation plan, so that we can look at whether there are options for us to reduce the timelines that have been initially indicated there, and look what other options we can have in the meantime due to the lengthy period that's required. There was also an emphasis on the issue of skills, so that we become deliberate in looking at addressing what types of skills we need to have, and also look at how can we, influence the development of these digital skills that can support the satellite during its launch, but also during its operations. And those will also gonna utilize some of the services. Next slide. The other issue which was raised by the committee was the issue of the funding options, so that we look at them and also, try to indicate what options are available to us, which are being considered at this stage, so that as we engage with the different stakeholders, we can look which options will be able to support our plan in terms of this strategy. The first option was to look at support from the fiscus through treasury allocation. And we know, based on the estimations of a project of this nature, that will be very difficult to get that amount, all of it, from the fiscus. So we had to look at other options, looking at public and private partnerships, which most satellite launches are actually follow that model, because it does require all the different stakeholders from a policy perspective, from those who are going to be doing the technical support, the design and the launch, and also importantly, those eventually will commit that they will be using the service once the satellite is launched. So you need to look at how do you structure such commitments, which involves local and international participants. We also then look at debt funding, how they envisage the satellite company can start looking at that, and what will be required to support. And the different funding institutions, looking at the development funding institutions and how they can also provide the support. We've had initial engagements with some of these institutions to understand, what will be their requirement and how they can come and support a program of this nature. And they all emphasize that the strategy becomes very important, because it galvanizes everyone in terms of the direction that needs to be looked at. And then also then we looked at blended financing of this project or a program. And that's where the Infrastructure South Africa as well will also play a huge role in terms of how they support departments in building a bankable business case so they're able to attract the funding from the different funding institutions in a blended approach. Next slide. Here we're just looking at the high level, implementation of project milestone for satellite, because there are very key steps that are required once the strategy is finalized, and you're unable to skip some of this. You can run some of the activities in parallel, which we are trying to show that the activities that must be done at the initial stage. Now, as we get the strategy to be finalized, the governance issues, we indicate the estimated timelines, and it's because it requires stakeholders from various institutions, even international, to commit this, and that commitment should be at a high level, as some of it also goes with financial commitment. And we look at the planning stage as well. Those will assist us with the design and the planning of the satellite and acquiring the necessary resource, which is the space segment, including the spectrum that's associated with that up in the sky, so that we're able to say when we launch the satellite, this is where it's gonna be positioned up in the sky. And then there's gonna be an implementation stage where there's manufacturing of that satellite, and then there's gonna be testing, and of course then the finalization of the program. We just even look at the critical path of this project milestone to look at how we can try to even shorten that. But in addition to this, there are other options that are being considered so that because it's still a lengthy period, leveraging the existing capacity that we have through Centec and SANZA, what can be done. And I think the CEO of Centec can also elaborate on some of the options that we do have and which we are considering whilst we are looking at this ultimate objective of launching our own satellite as a country. Next slide. And with regard to the issue of the skills, we reported in the last meeting that it's not like South Africa does not have some of the skills. We do have some capability in satellite. At some point, we had most of the capability. Of course, that has diminished over time, but we still maintain some of that, building some of these small satellites, and also the issues of assembly, integration, and testing of satellites, and launch operations, which SANZA also plays a very critical role in that regard. So we do envisage that to augment the skills gap that we have, they will need to be partnering with international organizations. But what will be critical in that partnership will be to ensure that there is transfer of skills so that we build upon the skills that we've got and develop the ones that we do not have. We do have the issues of telemetry testing and command capability that SANZA have, which also supports some of the foreign entities in terms of from a satellite launch perspective. Next slide. So in terms of the way forward and the next steps, we have commenced with the process of submitting to the strategy to cabinet for approval so that it can be gazetted for public consultation. It's already internally within the department. Once that we receive, then it's going to be submitted to cabinet, and then the public will be given an opportunity to provide their input on that draft strategy. And then those inputs will be analyzed, reviewed, and then if necessary, depending on the nature of the comments, we may need to convene a workshop, particularly if there are issues where we believe that the views are quite divergent, to try and achieve some consensus in terms of the approach. So that will really be determined by the nature of the comments that we get. And then we'll be able to convene that workshop. Once that's done, then we will finalize the strategy, commence with the process of obtaining the socio-economic impact assessment from the presidency, which then lead us to be able to consult with the DGs clusters again, and then submit that strategy to cabinet for final approval. However, even whilst we're busy with this, these constant engagements between the different stakeholders, the DCDT, also Department of Science, Innovation and Technology, and also the entities, Centec and SANZA, to say what are the other activities that can be done in the meantime, so we are not just waiting for the strategy to be approved, but we do some of the things proactively where it's possible to do that, to minimize the timeline once the strategy is approved. And then you can move to the next slide. So maybe before I even get to the recommendations, I'll ask Mr. Peter Milo, who also lead the committee that does the regular engagement with the stakeholders, just to talk a bit around the engagements and how we have adopted the guidance that we received from the joint committee from the last meeting. Over to you, Peter.
Thanks, Chairs, Deputy Ministers, and honorable members. In terms of the engagement, there is a steering committee that was established by both Director Generals of the department. This steering committee comprises of officials from DCDT, DSTI, SANZA, and Centec. They are mainly responsible for the development of this particular strategy. It was unfortunate in our previous meeting that it appeared that we are not meeting. We do meet on a quarterly basis. If necessary, we do meet on an ad hoc or as in when there are matters that need to be discussed. All the development and on a strategy, all the consultation with various stakeholders, there is a meeting, pre-meeting and post-meeting, to brief the team so that we are able to brief our respective accounting officers in terms of the progress that we've been making on the strategy. In 2024, early 2024, we did held a consultative workshop with relevant stakeholders from Department of Transport, Defense, and other key stakeholders that were interested or are utilizing the strategy currently. Their input has been incorporated into this particular strategy. As members will be aware that this strategy is long overdue, but since our last session with the committees, we have made substantive progress in terms of the next step that needs to be followed. We are on a way to get approval from Cabinet so that we can conduct wider public consultation. There is interest from various groups, mostly from private sectors in terms of this particular strategy. I think the Office of the Ministry, Deputy Minister and DG has been flooded with inquiries about companies, private companies looking for this particular strategy. But obviously we are following the governance protocol, and once the wider public consultation is done, there might be even a need to hold another workshop with stakeholders that are interested in terms of the investment or the build of the satellite in the country. So yes, honorable members, there is a lot of progress that have been made, and the team is here from all the entities, 4 entities, to support the last recommendation by the committee that we need to work from one book, or we need to work from one platform. We are both here, and we are all here to ensure that we present the progress to the committees. Thanks.
Thanks, Peter. I've consulted with DG Detroit whether the colleagues from DSI will be interested in making comments, and the indication is that they will participate if there are questions, so they can also assist, but just to show that we have been working very closely with them. Thank you very much. I'll hand over back to the DGs.
Thank you very much, co-chairs. Through the DMs, I would like to then hand back to you, and we stand ready to respond to any questions.
Thank you, DGs. Can I just check the entities? Mr. Ngobeni indicated that Centec may have some additions. I'm not sure if Sansa is here, if there are any additions from Centec.
Yeah, not really, Chair. We are covered by the presentation. Perhaps just to emphasize the need for satellite for South Africa. Satellite technology is gaining traction in Africa, and as a result, will become one of the future reliable capability to provide connectivity and services. One good example, about 2 weeks ago, our neighboring country, Botswana, announced launching their own satellite, BotSat-1. The size of the economy that Botswana is and the size of the economy that South Africa is, the number of jobs that we have to protect by leapfrogging to next technology is becoming even more urgent now, Chair. So really just to emphasize the need for us to move. We have made significant progress in the past 3 months with regards to coming closer to Cabinet for approval. And it's quite pleasing. So it's in support of what is being presented, Chair, to Chairs. Thank you.
Thank you. Sansa? They're not in the, yes, Acting DG?
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Unfortunately, we do not have a representative from the South African National Space Agency here, but they are, I can confirm they are intimately involved in this collaboration. And in actual fact, the technical and operational support which the agency will provide for the implementation of the strategy, I think just underlines the case why it's important for South Africa to invest in the capability of a fully fledged space agency. So through the oversight role of the department over the space agency, I can confirm that they are fully part of this effort. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the presentations. It shows that really, Chair, that there's a work that has been done between the time that we met and now, and there's progress in regard to the strategy and some of the work that is being done on the sidelines. We really appreciate that that the efforts from both the departments. So we are now going to take questions from members. I will note hands of those that want to raise questions. We will start with Honorable Tembakwayo then you will be the first one, then the second, third, Honorable Matsoni, fourth, Honorable Ramungaro, and then we'll come here and yes, I think you are all noted, Honorable members. Let us take it from Honorable Tembakwayo.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thanks for the presentation done. And greetings to the deputy ministers and everybody who's here. I just would like to ask about the executive positions that were announced here, DG. Specifically, the executive positions mentioned here is mainly male dominated. That is worrisome, especially in 2025, after 30 years of being, of us being in government. Do you really say there are no women that are qualified to occupy some of these positions? And hearing that there are also acting positions here, please consider to balance the gender. We don't want to see all male cabinet here. Let it be gender balanced so that we move on with a balanced gender that would lead this important aspect of ours. And secondly, some major players in geostationary something, where in some instances, the manufacturers, the launcher, and the operators are the USA. And you know the condition nowadays. we can say they are part and parcel of the partnership in South Africa. But mark my word, tomorrow, there can be an announcement of exclusion of South Africa in the whole thing. Do you have a plan B that we can think of? That brings us to the involvement of other African countries. Well, partly I was answered in the question that I was going to ask about an example of Botswana. But is it only Botswana, or do we have other African countries that we can actually, or that are also involved, or who are boasting their national satellite, that we can also go in partnership with, excluding those that we are not even sure or guaranteed of their existence with us? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chairs and honorable members. Mine is easy. I just want to ask the Deputy Minister, can you provide us with detailed cost benefit analysis comparing the proposed satellite system to alternative terrestrial solutions? For example, like fiber optic expansion, 5G network, include the project timelines, long-term maintenance cost, and measurable outcome for rural connectivity. Another thing that I want to, I'm covered by your presentation because I was interested to know whether did you consult all the stakeholders, especially business people, small business, and other stakeholders. And then I think there's a risk involved in this, given the failure of ESCOM, SAA, and other SOEs. What legal binding safeguard are in place to prevent SATCO from becoming another mismanagement entity? Will the procurement processes be subjected to real-time public oversight? We know there's a corruption. We can't run away from that. How are you going to avoid corruption, mismanagement of funds? And my colleague touched on your management, that we want to see women on management, not only males. Yeah, let me end there for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, chairpersons, deputy ministers, and acting DGs. Let me start by saying, with a project this ambitious, I think the first thing that we need to do is get rid of the title acting. How long are we going to have acting? I'm not talking about her. You see, this deputy minister looks after you. You see, you can't complain about that. He's got your back. But I do think that we need to really stabilize who we have in our leadership, because this isn't a short-term project. This is a long-term project. And chairs, I must tell you, I speak with a little bit of experience because I've served both on communications, originally in 2011, and then again later on in my parliamentary career, and now I serve on science and tech. So I'm very lucky that I have a broad understanding, or at least I hope I have a broad understanding by now of how it goes. And I want to say to the departments, I don't think it's fair on you if you're always acting. Because one day it's this person, and then the next day it could be that person, and the next day it could be, it causes instability. And when there's instability, it means that there's not a cohesive, happy workplace. And the one thing that I've learned dealing with Deputy Minister Ngubele for many, many months, dealing with state-owned entities, one of the reasons things break down is when there's a constant turnover. And constant turnover isn't a sign of good management. It means that something is fundamentally wrong if there's a constant turnover. Chair, we went to, chairs, forgive me, we went to the Space Agency and we had a very comprehensive breakdown of the Space Agency's involvement in the satellite program. I think I was possibly childlike excited at the thought of having the first African astronaut in space in the not too distant future. I think it's sad that we haven't done it already because I think we have the capabilities, we just don't have the money to do it. But we certainly have the expertise and we certainly have the know-how to get it done. But chairs, we also then went to the SALT telescope and the SKA radio telescope. Very recently, we were there at the beginning of March. And I think it was possibly one of the most incredible experiences of my professional life. And what did we happen to see on the night that we were at SALT? We saw the launch of over 200 satellites that we happened to just catch. It was actually the chairperson and I, per chance, were looking at, funnily enough, Jupiter. And in the process of looking at Jupiter, we suddenly saw all these satellites go up into the sky. And what had happened was a launch had happened in Florida. The capsule had opened and the satellites started to drop to their coordinates. And as they caught the rays of the sun, so we saw them from Sutherland. It was incredible. But what was disappointing was they weren't South African satellites. And that brings me, Chair, possibly to my last point for now. Those weren't South African satellites, and none of the satellites that are above us are South African satellites. They operated from international corporations that may lend or we buy information and technology from. And that shouldn't be the case. It really shouldn't, considering the scientists that we have in our country. They are phenomenal. Starting from the National Research Council to the astrophysicists on the ground to the Space Agency, I cannot sing their praises enough. They are exceptional. So as a portfolio committee, to stand there and watch an international space program launch satellites above us, it's hard going. And then to hear that Botswana, our neighbor, is beating us, and it's almost like the new space race. You know, in the 60s, I wasn't born yet. I'm happy, just showing off my youth, what's left of it. But, you know, there was a space race in the 60s. Well, there should be a space race in Africa. We should be challenging each other as to who gets into space first. But DM's, chairs, 100 kilometers in the sky. Let me show off how well I listened. 100 kilometers in the sky is South African airspace. 100 kilometers and above is international airspace. So that means you have to have international agreements because there's satellites flying over us all the time that don't belong to us. They belong to other countries. Some of them we have agreements with, some of them we don't, some of them we know what satellites they are, some of them we don't, because the world turns and so the satellites turn. So why is DIRCO not here? I think DIRCO needs to be fundamentally involved with how we create international treaties and arrangements in this international space that's 100 kilometers above Earth. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you to the chairs and greetings to all the colleagues. I'll just get straight to my questions because I think my colleagues have covered me on a lot of things that I wanted to raise. You know, Chair, like I think South Africa shockingly not having its own satellite communication strategy, and you know the fact that we rely on foreign communication system. This, for me, has been one of the most alarming and shocking things ever. And I think we've alluded and spoken about, how serious it is, towards our national security, it poses a threat to our national security. And, you also mentioned, Mayor, like how vulnerable we are as a country not having this, satellite communication strategy. So, but I would like to know, previously, right, with us not having the satellite communication strategy, if you've ever picked up any risks on South Africa's national security, because of the reliance on foreign national entities for this service, and also who has been supplying us with this service as a country, and what has been the cost implication to South Africa, and vis-a-vis, have you calculated how much it would have us to have our own SATCOM in place? Second question, in advancing the deployment of South Africa's own satellite communication system, my fellow colleague has also alluded to it. Have you, for lack of a better word, investigated potential companies, that you're going to procure with? And are we certain that they have, the necessary skill set and the necessary qualifications? Because I'm not saying this is the case with this department, but we know with, government departments, things like negligence and, mismanagement when, procurement is concerned, it's always an issue. And that's the reason why a lot of projects fail. So can you take us into confidence to say with this one, because this is a mammoth, project, it's huge, and we can't play around with it. We can't take any chances. So can you please take us into confidence that you've actually done your due diligence in terms of who you are going to actually partner with, and, for us to see this project come to fruition? And my third question, once we have our SATCOM in place, are you also looking into offering this service to other countries? Because obviously at a fee, because there's a dire situation with the economy. So are we also looking into, maybe capitalizing and having our own SATCOM and offering the service to other countries as well? I looked at your SWOT and risk analysis, and you make mention of the inability to procure the satellite, which, brings me to my next question of which is where I'm lost. Are we procuring the satellite elsewhere? And where are we procuring it from? Are we not building our own? Do we not have the capacity, to build our own, with so much? I think my colleague has also said, advancement in the type of technology and skills that we've seen coming from South Africa. So if we are procuring it from another country, like, does that not pose a risk to our national security as well? And if indeed I am correct in assuming that we are procuring the satellite from another country, what entails this procurement? Is it just the skills, or is it, the entire project? And the last question is, we understand that, the South African government is, currently facing dire fiscal challenges. And in your honest opinion, should National Treasury decide to 100% fund this project, would the return on investment not be justifiable in the long run? And I'm probably reaching with this one, but considering how tight, our budget is currently, but would it not be more plausible to have Treasury fund this project fully based on the number of benefits that it will have for the country, which is why I liked your quote, Honorable Deputy Minister, about Fidel Castro. That is indeed, true. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, and greetings, Honorable Chairpersons, our Deputy Ministers, and the teams from the departments, both departments. Thank you very much for the presentation. We really appreciate the information given. I have a question on the legal part that is presented here. How will the project navigate the existing legal and regulatory landscapes concerning satellite operations in South Africa?
And my other question is, what are the contingency plans if the satellite fails to deliver the projected market penetration or financial returns? The third one, how will the project plan for potential technological advancements that may emerge during its development and operations? My other question is more on the skills development. I know that the two departments are not on. It's a function of basic and higher education, but I am concerned with the fact that we will have to go for other countries or get some skills. Is it not possible for us as the two departments engaging basic education, engaging higher education, so that we can start as early as now with the programs, training programs, and also start to influence the curriculum at the level of basic education, and also the curriculum at the level of higher education, so that these particular skills that will be required in implementing the strategy is developed within the country. In particular, looking at the young people that are still there, that are in the universities, those that are still at high schools. Well, I'm asking this question, and I'm proposing that we look at that, because what we saw where Honorable Mazzoni is talking about the astrology sector within the department, we could see that at least they are trying to get to the youth. They are trying to diversify it. The youth that was that was assisting us to project in the sky were just trained and assisted by the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation, but they were recruited from high school to get to that. So yeah. And if that can be included also in the strategy, the cultivation of skills. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We are going to start now from Honorable Morara, but we would like first to welcome Honorable Sauls and Honorable Boshoff and Honorable Nkosi. They had been mentioned that they will arrive a bit late due to other commitments. You are welcome. We are in discussions now and questions. We will now hand over to Honorable Morara for your comments and questions.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Good morning to both of you, co-chairpersonship, deputy ministers, and honorable members. Chair, let's welcome both presentations. And I think to ask questions here might not be adequate, because I still feel that there's information that is necessary, particularly to us as members of parliament, so that we are fully empowered as far as this particular area is concerned. It's a very critical area. It's long overdue. And I'm worried that we are lagging behind, even behind Botswana. Maybe Lesotho is advanced, and I'm not sure what happened. Really, I'm not sure, because South Africa is supposed to be a leading country in the continent, given the resources that we own as a country. Given the geopolitical tensions that are confronting us today, it means that our country is vulnerable in all respect. And I'm not sure how then do we stop this parasitic dependence from other foreign agencies. I think we must take a decision that must stop this. Because digital technologies and industrial technologies normally start with the security cluster in any country. Digital starts with defense forces, CIA, KGB, you may look only institutions. Then it cascades to other levels. And South Africa was once a leader as far as this is concerned. Now, and maybe it's a matter that we must scrutinize seriously so that we see how best we begin to reposition this country for the better in dealing with this particular question. The funding options. I don't imagine Treasury funding this project 100%. I don't. Given the challenges that is confronting our fiscals today. But there are institutions in the country who can be exploited, not necessarily exploited, who can be commanded to fund such programs, particularly if projects are of national interest. Anglo-American has been digging our gold and diamonds for, I'm not sure how many decades and centuries, accruing profits, plus or minus 70% of profits going offshore. And that institution was never given an obligation to take responsibility of some of the national programs that are like this one. And I'm saying perhaps not for the first time. Let's exploit and explore where the Anglo-American who's digging our minerals cannot be given a responsibility. It's beneficial even to them as far as this. There's one option. And I know that it's a matter that people would always be careful, extra careful. Those are our minerals. And the other countries are obligating institutions that are digging minerals to fund such programs, national programs, in the interest of, and I know that's our task as politicians as far as this is concerned. We may try Treasury to fund this thing 100%. Secondly, I'm not aware, Chair, of the skills availability in the country. What is available, whether you've done a feasibility study as far as this particular program is concerned. If you have done a feasibility study, where is the report of that feasibility study? But that feasibility study will be able to tell us exactly where we are. Is the report available that have undertaken the feasibility study? I'm raising this because you're supposed to have presented the skills audit that is available that will drive this particular project so that it's not a project that is going to fail, but to ensure that was successful from the beginning in implementing this particular project. How much skills do we have as far as this scope goes? Thirdly, the question of the space capabilities of the country. I was not part of visits, never visited on behalf of this parliament, any of the institutions. But I think it's very critical because now we are entering a new phase of dealing with very critical matters. Your analysis of the space environment in the country, not only in South Africa, but continental, so that we're able to reposition ourselves, given the capabilities that the country is supposed to be having by now. Have you done adequate analysis as far as this particular area is concerned, so that we don't fumble in the middle of the project? Because there's a trend here that project starts well, midstream they collapse. and it would be an indictment if such a big project would collapse in our hands. So I must appreciate that at the end, ultimately, we are going to develop our own national strategy, which is long overdue as far as this is concerned, so that we're able to reposition ourselves in leading other countries in the continent. I'm jealous because South Africa is regarded as one of the leading countries in the continent. However, if we're lagging behind on critical areas, then it means our capacity is doubted all the time, whether at the level of departments or government or whatever, but our capacity is under question. And I don't think we can allow that to proceed. So my request here would be to provide us with sufficient information, and maybe those workshops that you are suggesting be the workshops where you're going to share with us full information as far as this project is concerned. There are matters that we think are very critical that we must pose. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, we may proceed.
I was just taking a break. It was, yeah, I thought it was getting more energy. Thank you so much, co-chairs. Good morning, colleagues. It is heartening to hear of the progress that's been made since the joint meeting that we last heard. It's wonderful to see that things can move this fast in government sometimes. And my question to the departments is, what measures are you going to put in place or have you put in place to ensure that this momentum is maintained? Having said that, and noting that things in this environment or for this particular project are typically going to take a bit of time. It's not really the kind of project that you can expect a change on a daily basis or even on a monthly basis. And I wanted to propose a question, Chair, that would it not be helpful to have the meetings maybe every 6 months as opposed to quarterly? I feel that this would allow the department's time to actually even do the work so that we don't come here to hear we've still submitted, we're still waiting for a response, but perhaps 6 months might be a more reasonable time frame to allow them to have some concrete responses, feedback by the time we get to committee. Noting though that my first question actually was because I wondered to myself whether the progress is because the committee is now looking at the departments, but I would hope that of their own accord, they will be able to maintain momentum even in 6 monthly intervals. It is, I've noted that this is meant to be a 5 to 7 year project. However, we haven't even finalized the strategy for it yet. And my question is the strategy finalization part of that 5 to 7 year timeframe? And in the view of the departments, will we be able to meet this 7 year timeframe for the entire project? And maybe what are likely to be the bottlenecks? What are likely to be the risks? What are the highest risks we face in regard to not being able to make the time as envisaged? And on the strategy itself, when do we envisage that it will be finalized? It's also good to hear of partnerships with foreign entities, and I heard them also mentioned both in terms of funding, but also in terms of skills. But I didn't hear anything about local academia. Are we involving the academic sector within the country in this important undertaking? On that, the role of local technology players, such as telcos and broadcasters, etc., in the development of the strategy itself, not as consumers of whatever final products come. But one of the disconnects that we often find within the sector is that there has not been sufficient involvement of stakeholders, particularly those who will be utilizing the services at the early stages, so that we don't find ourselves perhaps with a product that doesn't serve the needs of industry, whom we will be expecting to be the users and financial supporters of whatever it is that we will develop. On that note, in regard to the public-private partnerships, what ownership or espionage safeguards are we putting in place? Because one of the big dangers, it's been alluded to by some of my colleagues here, is that whatever we produce, we might end up not owning. To what extent are we safe? What are we saying this is a non-negotiable? It's going to be owned by South Africa. It will remain here. It will be under our full control. And what is it that we are saying we are happy to share or have partial ownership of it by others? This whole question of sovereignty and protection. This has also been raised. I'm just going to ask it again by way of emphasis, but corruption and wastage are two big scourges in our country. We have the biggest economy on the continent. We certainly have the biggest budget on the continent. And so you would expect that we would have been able, the other colleagues spoke about the expertise that we have in the country. So if you've got the resources and you've the financial resources, you've got the knowledge resources, what stopped us? And one of the reasons for that, I would imagine, is corruption and just wastage and a lack of focus in what we do. So I wonder, where will ultimate responsibility and accountability for the financial management aspect of this project rest? I'm also happy to hear this was covered by the DG from DSTI, and it had just been ringing as a point in my head earlier on. I'm happy to hear about the involvement of user departments. And I would say that please ensure their continued involvement. We've seen with projects such as broadband connectivity, etc., where departments get involved at the later stage in the project. And by that time, maybe the product that's been developed is not appropriate for them. And also, Honorable Mkhunu mentioned something about the policy, legislative and regulatory framework, both for the development, at the development stage, but also at the usage stage of the build. I'm wondering, have we done an assessment of the legal frameworks to ensure an enabling environment, both for the build and for when we actually utilize the services? And finally, it's been good to hear of the interest from stakeholders that was reported here. I feel that it shows the excitement for the project and the usefulness that it could be. But I think it also shows the frustration that industry and the public at large have over the delays and just this lack of this tool that we should already have as a country. However, I have to say that the progress that's currently being reported is encouraging to me. I would encourage the departments to keep it up, and I wish you Godspeed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Co-Chair, and greetings to DMs and the DG and the DDG and the officials from different entities. Honorable Chairperson, first of all, we must thank and appreciate the report, because it shows that there's something that is happening in whatever we have said. They are actually trying to implement it. But Honorable Chairperson, some of my questions have been asked by our other members, but only the one that I have interest of is the issue of reduction of communication cost. If that one can be actually clarified, because if you can just say the communication cost, without saying what strategy do you have to deal with that one? And the issue of bridging the digital divide in rural and underserviced communities, because I'm somebody who from rural areas, because most of things that are happening, they are happening in townships and in well-developed areas, but there is nothing that is happening in rural areas, in underdeveloped areas. So now, what program do you have to actually deal with the issue of rural areas? And the issue, Honorable Chairperson, is the issue of stakeholder engagement. I'm trying to check that do you involve transport, police, and human settlement and public service and administration? Because I think those departments are very critical on the issue of this project. And the other issue, Honorable Chairperson, is the issue of private involvement, because you see, if you involve the private, it can help for the purpose of investment. If that one can be actually take care of. And other Honorable Chairperson, the issue of satellite skills, because if you don't have developed, especially in rural areas, the skills. You see, on weekend I was at Ngutu. There's an area that they call it Shosholoza area. There's no network there. So it means if the area that is next to the town, they don't have a network, it means there's a lot of there's a lot of challenges that are happening in rural areas. Honorable Chairperson, thank you very much.
Thank you. I noted all members. So, Honorable Nkosi, I see you want to add Honorable Bishop, Honorable Sals, Honorable Nkosi.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Greetings to both of you, chairpersons, and greetings to deputy ministers, honorable members, and all departments in the meeting. Chair, I think the proposed South African Communication Satellite Project presents nothing but promising opportunity for enhancing the telecommunications within the region. And the homegrown communication satellite system that will help us be less reliant on foreign satellite service providers, focusing operational model that supports local needs. I think, Chair, it's truly a progressive move for South Africa. But Chair, I know that there are several challenges that must be addressed. These concerns range from financial and technical feasibility. But I know and believe we are going to go through because we are capable. Chair, I only have a few questions that I wanted clarity on. The first is what specific financial risks are associated with each of the proposed financing models? And how will they be mitigated? Chair, I ask because earlier on, I believe there was a question, I think it was mentioned that obviously treasurer won't be able to fund 100% of the project. So we are going to have to go and ask maybe financial support somewhere, and there will be a risk. How are we going to mitigate that? That is the first question, Chair. The second one is, how will the project ensure that the skills development initiatives are effectively aligned with the industry needs for the satellite operations? And the last one, Chair, is it has been presented that stakeholders have been engaged. Yes, I heard in the presentation. But what measures will be taken to foster a collaboration among those various stakeholders? And how will their competing interest be managed? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, honorable members, for the questions and comments. I think before we hand over back to the DGs for responses, we are going to deal with the proposal that was made for this joint sitting to sit after 6 months to receive the progress report from both the departments. I was having a small chat with the chair here that the reason we requested for 3 months was that for quarterly reports was that the process was halted for a long time, and we believe that if there is constant reporting and constant work so that we are briefed of the constant work that is being done, it's better than to wait for a long time and we do not see any progress on the project. We are doing this to fast track the process because it's urgent. The agency for us to have our own satellite must be noted by the both portfolio committees. So that is what we wanted to raise on the matter of the proposal, that we propose quarterly so that we don't sleep on job on this one. I just wanted to clarify that. And then we will take it back to something. Okay. I will give to the co-chair to raise some of questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chairperson. Maybe just one or two issues. Based on what the chair just said, I was going through the presentation that you had delivered in October, and I still don't understand why we are at the point that we are today. Why did this take so long? Maybe that will help us to also understand the problems, because we can't be lamenting Botswana and Kenya and everybody else. Why are we here, DM? Why did it take so long? So if we could please just have an answer to that. Then I wanted to check, in the presentation, it was said that you have now received approval from the JCPS cluster. What does that mean for the program that we were told that the Defense Force was also undertaking? Are they now collaborating, working with this particular steering committee, or is Defense still pursuing their own space program? And maybe I should have started off by commending you on the progress, to have gone through, 2 cabinet clusters, as well as getting a new SAES report. I know that that's no small feat. Also, trade and industry. I understand DTIC is responsible for the Space Council. What is their involvement in this program? DGDM, it would really be good to see a project plan according to which we hold you accountable. Because in the presentation today, you don't make mention, which you did the last time, about the time it would take you to apply for an orbital slot. I don't know whether that has since been done or what is happening there. So if we could just get a sense of what are the timelines that you are working towards, so we don't rush expecting you to have completed things when you shouldn't have. One of the members has already asked about cost, so I won't do that. But I'm keen to find out, at some point you were looking at various options, not just of funding, but of how you deploy, with the manufacturing of our own satellite being one option, whereas there were other options, either buying an existing satellite. Can you just take us through your thought process when you would have discounted those options? And then lastly, I think it was Honorable Vilakazi who was asking about the regulatory environment. I would be keen to find out that your inputs to ICASA on the satellites, I think it was 2 weeks ago, where were you steering the ship if government is also looking to play in that space? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Chair. I think I would also add one question on the space protection or security, because we have seen a chair Starlinks launching seriously massive satellites on the space, and when we asked the entity that was there with us, NRF, what does this mean for our space security for our satellites that are on the space? What does that mean? They did indicate that it provides risk for some of our radio frequencies in the space. So my mine will be to say that if we are prolonging launching and there is a massive launching that is happening from Starlink, what then become the risk for the time that we are going to launch our own satellites? Thank you. But I think we can now hand over back to you, DMs, Honorable DM Gungubela. I see that you are ready to respond and then forever ready and
I know.
DM Kina after.
Thanks, co-chairs. Thanks, all the members. I think the specialists are here. They are going to deal with this matter. But I just wanted to say one or two issues, although we may even come back at the end. That the big questions may not even be answered by the technical people. Why are we here? They are not the only ones who must answer that. I think all of us, politicians, everyone else. I think technical people have sold the value of this technology. That's the only thing they can do. But us, we must fund it. I think the biggest challenge we're confronted with in South Africa is a change of mindset. I've said it in the last meeting. We think that something else is going to happen beyond this one. We think that there's something that is very exciting somewhere coming. This is the only thing now, present in the future. If we don't sort this one out, we are done. I think we must work, Honorable Chair, amongst ourselves, change our mindset. Because I spoke about the cost of not doing this thing. The honorable member here was speaking, for instance, about the alternative terrestrial, and that there's no alternative. They are together. They are together. Terrestrial without this thing is not complete. You complete connectivity when this thing is in place. If it's not in place, it means your connectivity has got a lot of defects. It depends a lot on the land features. Satellite is able to fetch signals from your television, take it where your TV could not send them. Calls from where they couldn't go. So in other words, without this thing, our connectivity is not complete. They've already spoken about sovereignty. I got scared when one member says, what if we get excluded, because we're getting excluded these days on a number of things. Knowing now our satellite, where it is leaning on, knowing now where it leans on, it means the agency is very, very huge. The other comment maybe is that Honorable Mazwana spoke about something which I think applies across, but more in science: stability of the personnel. This is one area where you don't want to risk that phenomenon of stability. You can't afford. I'll say this because Professor Morala would have said previously, I've repeated it a number of times. He says we have produced a lot of masters and doctors in South Africa in this technology. He was asking a huge question, where are they? Some professors are saying, no, unless we fund, again, that is not done by teachers or technical people. They say, unless you fund the research and development, you will produce them in millions. They're not going to stay in this country. They are going to go where they are going to be used. So in other words, South Africa has exported a lot of skills which we're not making use of because we have not created conditions for their use. In rugby, they say you use it or you lose it. So if you produce them, you don't use them, America is going to use them and use them against you. So the big challenge, which is not only as a cabinet, all of us as politicians, as a country, we need to fight hard to change our mindset on this technology, or else we're going to be found wanting. You just go to this. There's research which was done somewhere where it can be demonstrated that the cost you spend in health today with this technology, you might need 1/4 of that cost and produce better in health. So we cannot justify that we don't have money when there's technology to change both the quality and the cost and give us competitiveness. So it's just fundamental. I'm not sure if my colleague want to say something before the DGs come in.
No, thank you very much, Chairs, and thank you very much to you, DM. It's just to concur with you, more especially on this one of the stability that was raised. Really, I think Honorable Mazone has touched on the nerve even on our department, as to say, really, you touch on this issue of the acting this and acting that cause a lot of instability. And it's not only the DSTI. Let me pass on this one on a very lighter note. Hey, I'm seated next to my DM here. Whenever someone's saying DSTI, he will pinch me and say, but the name of your department. I say, what's wrong with but I'm not there. It's DSTI, Honorable Deputy Minister Ngungubele. It is. Yeah, I want this thing to sink in you. It's DSTI. Yes, it is. Department of Science, Technology and Innovation. Yes. So the issue of that stability, honorable members, really we are working on that. We are trying by all means. Very soon we've just completed even the interviews for the DG, so that at least we just have that stability, so that as we go to the department as such, we make sure that that stability is there. We fully understand. It's frustrating even with us at the level of the ministry. It's quite frustrating, really. If all the departments, as we are saying, that stability for us to move, even in the entities, if ever really we can make sure that we work on that, I can assure you something can move. I also want to agree on the issue of the fact that as a country, when we say this strategy, we all agree that is overdue. And I think we all agree that it's not that as a country, it's because we're not capable of coming up with such. It's not because we're not capable. We have mentioned, or honorable members, what we have done as a country. You go to our SKA, there's so much that we can do, that we do. Go to SANSA, they are capabilities, but for me, really, it's just to say, how do we come together? How do we complement each other to see such a strategy where we are all seated around here to say it is going to be beneficial to each and every one of us. But exactly for that sovereignty of our country, for us not to depend on other countries, really, I strongly believe it's one project, let me call it, allow me to use that word. It's one project where we can say when we can come together and make sure that this come to fruition. It's one project where we can be proud and say, we have managed to do something good for our country, and let us come together and let's stop working in silos. That's one project that we must prove ourselves that as a country, we can put our interest aside and say what is best for the country as we move on. So let us allow our DJs really to lead on the issue of questions, the questions that have been raised. There's so much that you need to look at, the cost and so forth. Can you lead us on that so that maybe if there is a need, really, we can come back at the end just to wrap up. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the DMs, and thank you very much to the honorable members for the questions. Just maybe to work now with my DG, I'm going to ask him to take lead in terms of the response. After him, I would like to invite the CEO of Centec, just to add on with regards to also the work that we're doing within the regional space as well, and to respond on some of the issues related to the return on investment, the funding options, and how we arrived at this, and then also the maybe between him and the DDG, the processes that we have with regards to the application for the orbital slots. And we need to move with speed because we consider all of these scarce resources when you look in terms of the orbital slots. Similar to your spectrum, you can only have so much. So the longer we delay as a country, the more in terms of the orbital slots they get filled up, and therefore we'd find ourselves having that dependency and reliance on someone else who's already occupied a particular slot. Because the intent is that we need to ensure that we've got full coverage as a country, and as well as the extent of coverage within sub-Saharan Africa, which is our intended market for it. So I'm going to invite Mr. Dutoy, and then after him, Mr. Leshope. Thank you.
I want to interject that phrase sub-Saharan Africa is not allowed in our meetings. Thank you very much. Thank you, Acting DG.
Thank you very much, DG, and acting chairs, and thank you to the honourable members for those very strategic questions, which certainly gave us much food for reflection and will help us to enhance and guide our work. What I would do is I would focus from a science and technology and innovations perspective on the key strategic issues raised, and then the colleagues from DCDT and Centec will speak to the specific questions related to the strategy. And many of the important comments and questions raised, they don't only apply to satellite communication, they apply holistically to space science and technology, and indeed to the broader science, technology and innovation enterprise. And I want to start with a very important aspect of gender, and indeed, honourable member, it's regrettable that we are a male-dominated delegation. That is not consistent with our ethos and our commitment to transformation of our national system of innovation. As I said earlier, we're only going to unleash the potential of science, technology, and innovation to make a optimal contribution in South Africa through partnership, but at the same time, we're only going to do that if that enterprise of science, technology, and innovation becomes truly an inclusive one and provides opportunities for all South Africans to contribute. And that's why the transformation agenda is so important for our department, for our minister and our deputy minister. And indeed, 2 weeks ago, there was a national transformation summit on science, technology, and innovation, where there was a key aspect on gender. We've made important progress, but certainly much more needs to be done. We have an annual program, an awards program focused on women in South African science, technology, and innovation, of which one of the key focus areas is indeed the space sector, and making sure that we create opportunities for future space leaders amongst women in South Africa, and also very deliberate investment amongst women and young girls to follow careers in the space science, technology, and innovation sector. So I want to assure honourable member you that is a firm commitment of the department, which is shared, of course, with DCDT, and we will make sure that that commitment is also reflected in our actions. I then want to just reflect on and several members spoke about the geopolitical dynamics of this initiative and the vulnerability we face from a national strategic interest and national sovereignty perspective for over-reliance on specific partners or single partners. And that applies, again, not only to satellite communication, it applies to the other aspects of the space enterprise, whether, for example, it's global navigation satellite systems. That's why we are, for example, diversified, not only being reliable on the likes of the GPS, but also exploring collaboration with the Baidu system in China. It also applies to Earth observation. And that's why it's very important for the DSTI and SANSA that we maintain a broad and a diverse portfolio of international partnerships, with partnerships in the global north, but certainly also in the global south and on our own continent. And indeed, some members spoke about a competition, a space race in Africa, and I understand why it is sort of categorized as such. But I think the point is also important to emphasize is our commitment to Pan-African collaboration, which is in our collective strategic interest as a continent. South Africa is actively involved in the programs of the African Space Agency, headquartered in Cairo. Just last year, our South African National Space Agency had hosted in Tshwane a meeting of all leaders of African national space agencies. And indeed, as part of also our G20 presidency, as part of the Space Economic Leaders meeting under the G20 presidency, there will be a focus on the African space agenda. So we're very committed to collaboration with other African space nations. Of course, we should also applaud the success of the likes of Botswana and others, but I think at the same time, Chair, I should also mention, for example, the Botswana satellite is not a communication satellite. It's an Earth observation satellite. And it actually includes very strategic contributions by South African companies who have collaborated. And so there's South African technology, for example, on the Botswana satellite. And it's, I think, one of the strategic focus areas really, which as the colleague from DCDT also presented, is to make sure that in the strategy we not only procure, but that we build our national indigenous capabilities, our strategic abilities. We know there are several countries who have satellites, but if one would actually analyze what those satellites are, they're often just a procurement contract with very little local tech development and the building of skills. And I think, as the honourable members have cautioned, that is important for us as part of the strategy to make sure that we build our own national strategic capabilities. With regard to the regulatory international aspects, I should mention that indeed there's very close collaboration with DIRCO. For example, South Africa is very active and often adopt leadership positions in the various UN bodies dealing with space, such as the Convention for the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space. We work, for example, very closely with DCDT in the bodies of the ITU and the World Radio Communications Conference, all dealing with the regulation of international space. And it's very important that the voice of Africa is firmly heard in those instances, so that the rule settings of space become also an inclusive enterprise and is sensitive to the needs of Africa and the developing countries. And indeed, the Honourable Chair of the Science Committee also mentioned that one of the strategic interests for South Africa is to also protect our astronomy assets from interference from satellite communications. And we're very grateful. I mean, over many years now, DCDT has really been an excellent supporter of our efforts with regard to the SKA and the implementation of the Astronomy Geographic Advantage Act, which allows us to protect the South African observing capacity, that we remain a pristine environment for doing global astronomy of excellence. So those issues are very important and on our agenda. I just want to conclude with this sort of broad overview to assure the members of the committee that the commitment from the DSTI, SANSA and our entities to continue this very close collaboration. As members of the committee emphasize, we have important momentum And we will continue to do so. And we're working very closely with DCDI, not only on aspects of satellite communications, the broader digital innovation. For example, on artificial intelligence, we work extremely closely together. And I think this all augurs really, really well for our work together in the 7th administration. Thank you, DG.
Thank you, DG, Chair and committee members for the questions. Yes, I will attempt to deal with the technical and financial and business case viability of satellite-related questions, where after DDG and DG will deal with the process and governance-orientated questions. I think the first question that I want to deal with is what if the prominent launchers of satellite excludes us from their program? Are there other options for South Africa? I do want to confirm that the launch capabilities are broad in the world and have been diversified. So we do have options there. We could look to other countries if other countries are excluding us from participating on their launch pad or partnership as far as the capabilities are concerned. So there are options in this regard. And then the second question related to the cost benefit compared to terrestrial options. And I want to start with a comment that says there will be coexistence of both satellite and terrestrial platform for quite some time. So it will not necessarily be one over the other initially. Each one will fill a particular gap in a particular market, and there will be coexistence for a bit of time. Where satellite comes in handy and strongly is because of its ubiquity capability in terms of coverage. You are everywhere with satellite. There are instances where terrestrial coverage does not make business sense. You may find that the population that is there is very small to return on it. Then your satellite capability makes a lot of sense to leverage as a result as well. There's also a very strong development around communications on the go, the mobility of communications, autonomous vehicles coming. There's now the development around satellite telephones, which is the future that we are going into, which we need to ready ourselves for. So terrestrial technologies very much provide you fixed reception. This thing is tied to the house. Whereas some satellite benefit will be the mobility aspect of it, where you can be connected on the car, connected on the mobile, in some cases there. And from what we are seeing, honorable members, from our foresight in terms of the development of technologies, innovation on satellite, it's much, much faster. So with the LEOs satellites that are coming on board, entities are shooting up over 3,000 satellites, one business day, just to demonstrate that this is going to be a focus for the future that we are going into. So it is not a space that we believe we should not participate in as a result of the prospects of what is coming going forward. And then the next question, what controls do we have from protecting the satellites, and the issues of corruption and mismanagement associated with that question as well? A satellite from its manufacturing through its launching, it's tested for failures and commissioned properly to make sure that it lasts longer in the space. One of the prevention measures is to partner with a reputable satellite production and satellite launch a company or partner, if one could say that. And then also work with other already existing satellite providers to make sure that there is concurrency of services. The same service that we put on our satellite, we may also have to put on an alternative satellite, because once you're in the space, you have to play broadly there. And then issues of corruption and mismanagement of funds are associated with the satellite. We do plan to put a thorough and above board governance process in the deployment of the satellite. An open approach to attraction of partners is what we envisage right now, and we are championing the project from Centec Satellite, so Centec site, and we'll put in place the best processes from a governance point of view to ensure that there is no mismanagement of funds or corruption on the satellite. And then the other question, who supplies us with satellite in Africa right now? We have various players in Africa. Perhaps may not be in interest to mention the names, but there are close to 12 companies that are providing satellites over Africa right now, and those are then consolidated into the entire country fleet of satellite providers, which talks to the satellite economy and spend that we are talking about, on which there is a question on how much is the country spending on satellite at this point. It's quite a huge expend. I mean, just from Centec, we're looking at 300 million per annum. Other and consolidated, it's almost close to $1 billion cash outflow that goes out of the country per annum from the external providers of satellites in this regard. Now, we have to appreciate that expenditure and cash outflows, it's impacting somebody else's economy, not ours. So our GDP from exchange of services and goods is disadvantaged as a result of that. It could be best if we retain that spend inside the country to strengthen our own economy and protect our own jobs here. And then funding options, what we envisaged ultimately, though we may have the options of a state fully funded, it's a triple P, where the state takes majority shareholding such that it takes control of the satellite. But we are living in the economies of shared platforms, so closing out other players may also inhibit our competitiveness and diverse market attraction. And with that, we are also looking at other countries in Africa. Indeed, we do confirm that SADC countries are targeted for the satellite, but the predominant utilization of the satellite will be for South Africa. And then on the legal part, how do we plan to navigate? We are quite engaged with the regulator, with the ITU, as far as the matters of space orbital slot are concerned, and the DG and DDG will touch on this part. But the process is quite clear. The stakeholders are quite engaged and active. We have made our applications with the regulator. And even at the last ITU conference, there were discussions around access of our own orbital slot. The discussions are quite advanced as far as this matter is concerned. And then Honorable Mkhaka's question on the skills availability. We do have very strong ground station management capabilities in South Africa. Yes, we have not launched our own satellite, so this is an area of development as far as the manufacturing and the development of a geostationary satellite is concerned. However, we have been managing satellite and satellite-related technologies in South Africa for a very, very long time, honorable members. I mean, I once attended a launch in the West, and as the satellite left the launch pad, it was monitored by American-based company. As it was approaching the orbit, then it handed over to a South African monitoring station, just to demonstrate that we do have capabilities in the country. So that just needs to be exploited to our advantage in terms of launching our own satellite. And then are we involving academia? Yes, I think our model of engagement, this is Honorable Vilaka's questions, it does involve academia on the research and the CSIR, however, not as direct partners in the satellite, just when we are developing insight onto what needs to be done, what is best, what exists out there. That's really how we are working with the research institutions and the academia, the involvement of other stakeholders. We do have a very, very broad stakeholder engagement model where we outline all the stakeholders, and I'll just mention a few here, maybe just for your info. Where the SANSA is a key, and National Treasury, NAMSCO, SITA, the security cluster, as you would have seen, ICASA, and then all the other MNOs and enterprise users, government departments, the DTI, DSTI, and DCDT as also key players in the project. But defense as well is a key stakeholder in this project. So we do want to confirm that the stakeholders are broadly engaged. And then on cost reduction, where we are right now, honorable members, we are expending our caches on external providers, therefore limiting the control over the cost. We have a challenge and a need to reduce the cost to communicate. You cannot do that while you are not the owner of the investment. You are just putting a margin on a margin of already established technology. Now, when you do the investment yourself, you have an opportunity to definitely go to the bare minimum of return and recovery as far as that is concerned. So that's what we're looking at from the cost reduction benefit, that we really drive the cost to communicate down with the control that we will embed on this. And then, yes, we envisage satellite, a private investment. I think the satellite skills I have talked to briefly. And then the financial risk, yeah, it's availability of funds. But satellite is a viable case. If you see how many satellites, as honorable member would have reflected earlier, how many satellites are being shot on this to the sky on a daily basis, you see that investment is focusing right there. So we do not anticipate that it will be difficult to attract investors there. We do, however, feel strong that the local investment in terms of government just needs to take a dominant part of the investment so that we can be a dominant control, alternatively to dilute the distribution and such that even if it is not above 50%, but the investment of government is still the larger one in the process. And then did it take so long? I think this one DM responded to. And then there was a question that we need to clarify, I think, from the chairs on the options that exist. We will have also explored what is possible. So we are currently involved in what is called the satellite lease model, Chair. So in this instance, you buying capacity from somebody else and you're utilizing it. And once you are done with your mission, you return it back to the owner of that particular satellite. And in its form, it is not beneficial. You know, the residual value of that still remains, can be used elsewhere, even after you've paid up its establishment cost. And then the next model is a condosat. A condosat, you actually buy a satellite or partner with somebody to own fully a portion of a satellite, or you could be buying a satellite transponder from an already existing satellite. It does give you some level of control. You can own the satellite transponder segment for the entire life of that particular satellite. However, what we prefer is a fully owned satellite by South Africa. When you're in a condosat, you are joined in the control measures with a partner. So you don't have full control, full security over the bed once it is in the sky. So the preferred model with the growing cybersecurity attack, and South Africa generating a lot of information and putting it on satellite. The need to protect that information increases on a daily basis. It's where we have control, full control, and own that satellite. So we may go with a condo, which gives us quicker to service lead time, about 3 years. But ultimately, in 7 years' time, we want to be at a stage where we fully own a satellite. That's what we are envisaging, Chairperson. Quick to service or quick to market could be a condo initially, but ultimately we want to get to a fully owned South African-based satellite. Thank you.
No, thank you, CEO. I'll address some of the process-related questions. I think there's a question which maybe, let me start from where the CEO ended around the issue of the options. Also to address the question by the chair, whether those other options have fallen off. No, they have not, Chair, they are still part of the strategy. I think here we just focused on the broader approach of South Africa launching and owning the satellite. And those other options are the options that we will explore in between whilst we are waiting for the launch of the satellite. And then the timelines associated with that, I think they're still as they were presented. We did highlight some of them in that slide that talks to the implementation plan. And this also addresses the question on whether are we procuring or we are launching our own satellite. So the intention really is to launch our own. However, due to the timelines, really, we need to have these other options being explored as we do use a satellite in the country. With regard to how do we navigate the regulatory and legal constraints, from a regulatory perspective, ICASA is involved. We are also actively participating in the processes of the ITU, because ultimately what's important is that we need to obtain that orbital slot approval from the ITU, which requires then the consultation with the different countries to assess how it impacts their planned or existing satellite. So from the other regulatory processes, we should be able to meet them because it does requires what a licensed operator in the country should be able to have. So SATCOM will need to have, for example, an independent electronic communications network service license in order for it then to apply for the spectrum resource that can be utilized. So those are within the control in the country, so we should be able to manage those ones. In terms of the legal due diligence, we will need the support, of course, with the, as part of the plan, there's a need to appoint a transactional advisor, which will also provide that support, considering the highly specialized nature of this area of satellite and the need to engage with international partners. Yeah, on the issues of funding, whether National Treasury can fund 100%, there's a process from a Treasury perspective. It's called the budget facility for infrastructure funding. It's quite a rigorous process to fund infrastructure projects. And one of the requirements there is a detailed feasibility study, detailed options analysis from a delivery perspective, which we have already alluded to, but also detailed analysis of the funding options and their risks and mitigations, and coming up with a preferred one. And for that as well, they normally recommend that through the project preparation stage, supported by the development funding institutions like DBSA and also Infrastructure South Africa, they guide that process in terms of doing that detailed analysis. So as soon as the strategy is adopted or approved by cabinet, the next immediate stage will be to register this project with National Treasury through that facility, which then allows these other activities to be undertaken. However, I also need to point out that, I mean, when this process of the need for a satellite commenced about a few years ago, our initial reaction to it was through Centec developing a business plan. So there was a detailed analysis with feasibility study and assessment. That's how we got some of this data. However, at this stage, we're not able to take that work forward until the strategy is completed. And you'll also notice on the implementation plan, one of the key activities during the initial stage is the review of that business plan. So we know we've done most of the work, it's just to update that assessment since there will have been some other changes there. So we believe that will also assist us to shorten some of the processes that have been undertaken. The request to share some of the information during the workshop, I think we welcome that. Depending on if we do not have a workshop because we don't get the information or the comments that we get straightforward, but we believe that in that subsequent briefing to the committee, we should be able to provide much more detailed presentation to empower the committee with more information around this program. The question on whether the strategy finalization is part of the timelines, it's not. It's actually a precursor to these timelines. As much as there will be some work that's happening just to be proactive, but we need to have the strategy approved to get some of the work undertaken and commitments being done. So in terms of the other question, in terms of when do we anticipate to finalize the strategy? Our hope is that since the submission to cabinet process has commenced, if we are hoping that either during April may be difficult because of the holidays, we don't know the cabinet program, but we're hoping that at least by May, that it should serve before cabinet. If it does, then we have got 30 days to allow for public comments. So by end of Q1, we're hoping we should be in a position to have analyzed the comments. If not, then the beginning of Q2 to start the process now of going back to cabinet, so that by end of Q2, the cabinet has approved the final strategy with all the socio-economic impact assessment that must be redone after the strategy is finalized. I think the issue of the participation of the industry in the development, I think we'll also try to increase that participation. They have participated in the workshop, but I think what I'm hearing is that as much as we look at them from a consumer perspective, because before you launch a satellite, those are the key users of that satellite capacity. So you will need to have engagement, and often what happens is that you even have prior commitment from them before you launch a satellite. So that process is going to happen. But what I'm also understanding from the comment is that even now, during the actual development of the strategy, they must be involved. I think we'll just strengthen that before we finalize the strategy, either as part of that workshop or a special engagement process with them will be helpful to enhance the strategy. Yeah, in terms of the safeguards and what must be owned by South Africa, I think it will depending on an option that cabinet guides us that we should adopt. However, as indicated by the CEO of Centec, that with the full launch and ownership of the satellite, means all those key resources, the orbital slot and the spectrum, so you're not leasing any capacity, even the actual satellite bed, you own that. So we'll be guided by what will be cabinet's decision in this regard. The issues of corruption and wastage, it's one of the issues we highlighted in the strategy as a key risk. And that's even when you look at literature around the project of this nature, that it's a key concern. And we believe as we work with the transaction advisor, we should develop those mitigations ahead of the procurement stage, so that by the time we get to procurement, those control are in place to mitigate against that. There was a question, I'm sure that maybe the DG will deal with it in terms of who will be responsible for the overall financial accountability of the program. But because if you look at the whole value chain of the satellite, there are various players who will continue to be responsible for their key activities, and they will need to be funding for that. But in terms of the overall accountability, I think the DGs will be able to guide in that regard. Then there was a question on the reduction of communication costs and how does the satellite assist us with that. So firstly, particularly for the remote areas where you find that some of these areas are very far from the terrestrial infrastructure, whether it's fiber. Satellite helps us to achieve that much quicker because you already have got coverage there. The only thing you need to put is just a device at the home. So you don't have to invest more in the infrastructure to connect those people. So that if it's cost effective for the provider, it means they're able to charge less because they will be having more people connected without having additional investment in the infrastructure. We are seeing it currently also with the SA Connect program, where we also leverage satellite to reach some of these areas where Centec, through its satellite capability, has deployed connectivity through satellite. So it does assist in that manner. Otherwise, it will be very costly and take a long time to having to trench and deploy fiber infrastructure to reach only few people, because then the return on investment makes it very difficult for a business. However, satellite assists us to circumvent that challenge. And which also addresses the issue of the bridging the digital divide in the rural areas. That satellite already, once you've launched it there, the whole country, if it covers it, the whole country is covered. Really, you just have to see how do you support those people, either to get the device that they need to connect to the satellite, but the service is there for them. And then you just have to look at what are the digital inclusion strategies, which the department is currently looking at as well as part of the G20 process, to look at how do we improve digital inclusion, because the cost of the service, the cost of devices, they become also a very important factor, not only from the infrastructure side. So you may solve the infrastructure problem by deploying satellite, but you still have to deal with the issue of how the people get to access that service and be able to benefit from that. I think the issue of skills, I'll leave it to the DG as well to address and assist. I think the questions by the chair, I think they've been addressed by the CEO of Centec on the issues of the timelines. And there was the issue of the impact by the co-chair as well, in terms of it's having multiple satellites being launched. What's the impact, even on our program? It does have an impact from perspective that all the countries, even the providers who must launch a satellite, they must first get approval through the International Telecommunications Union. So you must first submit your intention there, and then they assess that. And when they do the assessment, they take into consideration what satellites are already existing, and also what satellites have been planned. So with that, it determines whether the countries will accept or support the application to use that slot. So the sooner we're able to conclude this process, hence the process to apply for the orbital slot will commence soon as the strategy is done. But that process already underwent from a technical perspective and the analysis. It's just waiting that we're able to have even the strategy finalized so that we can get that concurrence from the ITU and also other countries. I think I'll stop. I'll leave to the DG.
Thank you very much, Chair. As we then wrap up, and thank you to the colleagues also for responding. Perhaps then to just further unpack the issue with regards to both the funding as well as the role of the private sector or the market itself, leaning in terms of what the CEO of Centec has indicated. When we designed our satellite program and the satellite itself, as I indicated, that it's mainly to ensure the South African services across various spectrum. So primarily it is for communications, but we can obviously leverage in as far as the issues related to research, but then also for the other sectors as well, especially now that we're in the digital economy sphere and the digital transformation agenda of the country. And we did engage the private sector at the onset of when we then were developing the strategy or revising the strategy around 2021, 2022, with then the indications of for South Africans to have, and that's why we have framed it as a national satellite strategy. So it's not just a government owned, but it is going to have a public-private collaboration. There was an interest, and I think obviously stemming from it, I mean, our sector always says, firstly, we just need to ensure that we put it within the priorities as well as a policy pronouncement. What we are now currently hearing from them as well, earlier on this year, was the urge for us to move faster, because some of them have got contracts with these international organizations whose contracts are likely to lapse around 2027. So they're asking to then say, what are then our timeframes with regards to the delivery of the national satellite strategy? So that's why then there is now, as the Deputy Minister indicated, the urgency for us to pursue this. Previous years, Chair, you asked the question, Chair, for our Portfolio Committee on Comms. You asked the question to say, why did it take so long? I think two issues there. The first was then the issues with regards to fiscal constraints, which we still have now, and I'm going to respond in as far as how do we mitigate that. The second issue was obviously, I think, conflicting priorities as well. I think so we would start the project, and the question was, I think initially when we're designing it, it was just us as a department, and we have to be honest about that. We had to make sure that we get in other stakeholders. We have to make sure that for a business case and for it to be viable, we have to make sure that there's both the government buy-in, but also external stakeholders to sustain it. And that was then the pursuit that we did in as far as the process for it. And as I indicate that at least now we're sitting from a much better business case in terms of the viability of it, because it is an investment of 20 to 25 years. And we've also, as you would heard from the colleagues, in terms of the business plan, to really look in as far as ensuring that it is viable and you're able to make sure that within its lifespan, we're able to then ensure the return on investment. With regards to the funding model, it is, as indicated, it's a public-private. How we're doing that is as the DDGs that has indicated, we are going to put this under the National Treasury Big Budget Fund application. We are he didn't indicate, but we're working with DBSA. I think there was a question with regards to the concern with regards, we have to be honest with ourselves, the capability, the limitations and capabilities from a government perspective in as far as the magnitude of this project, making sure, as you said, that it's a financially viable. And also if we are then going to look at international partners comparing, we have to make sure that we've got the expertise on board. So that's why we're looking at the transactional advisor. So the DBSA is helping us with that program. And at the same time, then we're now going to do the contracting with the private sector to make sure that we also get the commitment from their side as we embark. Honorable Chair, you asked, there was a strong emphasis with regards to the issues of skills as well as gender. When we did start, we had an ambition in as far as onboarding as many in terms of engineers. So we've got, and I think maybe the CEO of Centec also omitted this, but Centec is establishing an academia where we are going to be training young engineers. And we've also collaborated, because now with obviously the evolution with regards to the technologies and emerging technologies coming up. We've also launched, if you would know, a number of AI hubs. One of those critical AI hubs is the one that is in the Western Cape DM, oh, it's here, Western Cape is here, with the Western Cape collaborating with the University of Stellenbosch. And it is purely focused with regards to the defense capabilities in terms of optimizing on AI. And we're working with the graduates in that program to then say, how do we then inbuild this within the satellite program as well? So there is a collaboration with academia, as well as ensuring that when you build it, we're also then putting in these new technologies that are there to really ensure from a data capability perspective, but also to ensuring the most efficient and most modern technology deployments to it. So I think those are then the questions from our side, but we're very mindful of the fact that we still need to do more as far as the expertise, but also onboarding more in terms of youth as well as women in this program. And as you can see, the current landscape. Thank you. Mr. Peter Mello would like to add. Thank you.
Thanks, chairs and members. I just want to add and make members comfortable that extensive consultation has been made with key stakeholders who are keen and interested in the deployment of satellite. We did, both BGs did establish what they call peer review committee team by the industry expert, where we held, I think it's a 3 days workshop in Sansa Space Operation, RTBS, with the experts to peer review the strategy. And we had a second engagement with the government agencies and government departments, I think for a whole day in Centec, Radio Corp, where we also allowed and gave them opportunity to provide us with the written inputs into the strategy. So as in when we develop the strategy, we have been engaging such, and there is an opportunity again during the public consultation for those experts and the industry again to make specific inputs based on the previous inputs that were made. But also maybe to report to the members that recently on Friday, we have received a CS certificate from Presidency to proceed to Cabinet for public consultation. It just is not reflected on the presentation because it's information that came on recently. Thanks. I just wanted to make members comfortable with regard to your consultation. We had consulted largely with the industry experts. Thanks. Thanks.
Thank you, DM and your team. I was hopeful that you will want to give some closing remarks, but now that you are done, we're happy. We're happy. We'll just take it from our side. We must say that we are pleased with with the progress of the work that is being done. The fact that the strategy has been presented now with all stakeholders and also with the cabinet committees, and it shows that we are getting somewhere. From where we started, there's a direction now. We are just hopeful that we will launch soon. And we might even beat the timeframes that have been placed before us. That is what we are looking forward to, actually, for us to launch so that we have coverage everywhere, DMs. We want, yes, not just two women, two progressive women to come together with their team from their progressive teams from the portfolio committees. Really, the interest of the portfolio committees, both portfolio committees, is remarkable. It's not only the two women, but it's the team effort that has brought us here. We are happy with the work, Chair. we're happy and we are hopeful that the quarterly reports that will come to us will bring something new all the time. And we are not looking forward to having a private launching, a private entity launching the satellite. We want it the way you are presenting it. It must be fully launched by the departments. It must be a South African satellite. We want to have our own independence in that space. If Botswana can do it in any other countries that does not match us with our economy and our, I always say that Botswana is the size of Soweto. So really, it's bigger than Botswana, so we can't fail ourselves in that matter. We can't fail. So we are hopeful that you will not fail us. At the pace that we are moving, we're hopeful that we are going to conquer this one. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. You know, whenever anybody mentions these African countries, I always think of poor Malawi and how we went down that road. This is not some national road in Malawi, it's South Africa. You're doing it to Botswana. Don't do that. Don't do that. Honorable Souls, I've noted your hand, but we're closing the meeting. I think you can just tap whoever you need on the shoulder as we depart. But let me join the co-chair in thanking everybody who participated in the meeting. I've learned now never to say this meeting is going to be a short meeting. There's just I've learned never to say that. But I do want to, Honorable Souls, I can see that you are trying to harass me. I refuse to be intimidated here. Just to say, DMs, that we're really encouraged by the progress that you're making. And I think that for Africa as a whole, DG, this issue of sub-Saharan South Africa that I was fighting about, I mean, that is nothing but an arbitrary and a racial construct of Africa, where people have sought to take the northern parts of Africa, called them white Africa, and then the rest of us below the Sahara Desert are dark Africa. So Africa as a whole, DG, I think that that's a very important step forward. There's a few things that I think you've noted that is being raised here. Obviously, the issue of gender representation, the issue of stability, especially in the teams, the fact that we must adequately participate in the space race, not just in Africa, but globally, how we use these particular resources to the benefit of Africa as a whole. We cannot overemphasize the risk to national security, also given the shifting geopolitical trends that we're seeing. And we do believe that this particular project is really seeking to firstly strengthen and solidify our space as a regional hegemon, but also in the interest of national security. I'm hoping, DMs, that you will also be looking at other areas within your portfolios where, when we speak about ensuring digital sovereignty, when we speak about national security, where there needs to be movement. I think it's time. We can't be paying lip service to this. Then we'll all be shocked the day that people whose names I won't call decide to act against the country and we're left defenseless. So thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned, but I will allow Honorable Souls to just say what he wants to say, but the meeting is adjourned. Honorable Souls, what did you want to say?
Chair, I want to really thank you for your indulgence and everybody else. It's just, I feel bad that in comparison to Botswana.
Don't go there.
Look, we are made to look like we haven't launched a satellite that is exactly like the one that Botswana has launched. In 2018, we launched ZAR-Cube. It's exactly the same as Botswana. So we have one up there already. Then in 1999, we launched Sunset. And so we have two satellites there. Don't make us look so bad. We are going for number 3 now. The difference is it's a communication satellite, this one. I just want to
Honourable
say that
members,
South
thank
Africa is on top.
Thank
And the
you.
GNU is working.
Thank you, honourable members. Thank you, co-chair. We will meet then again, I think at the end of next quarter, and we're hoping to see as much progress. Thank you, members. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Members of the Portfolio Committee on Science Technology, we are remaining behind for our portfolio business. And we are remaining with DigiDan. And DM Gina. DigiDan and DM.
Bye-bye, my baby. Bye-bye. Let's push this thing in.
Come on. I want to believe that we are remaining with the Portfolio Committee on okay. Can I get closer? Can I? Can you come next to me? Can I do this? Okay, we can now start with our own meeting. Remember last week we have agreed that we are going to have a session after the joint portfolio committee meeting. The session was on the international trip that we want to take as a portfolio committee. And we have agreed that we're going to have that discussion today on the countries that are viable for us to visit. So I'm going to give to Shanaz to assist us with the process.
Chair, I think members, one of the other motives for having the briefing on the international relations and cooperation program 3 was also to see if we were to do an international study tour, which then of the countries would be best suited for our purpose. Now we've got a briefing where we got, where there was emphasis on the kind of strong countries and what we've picked up, or if we were to narrow it down in terms of the discussions that we had with members and what came out last week, the sentiments were leaning towards the France, Japan, and China, Belgium. So those are the countries, but we've got the DDG here today to kind of, if those are the 4 countries that we identify, to maybe just put more to it as to would it be beneficial for our committee to visit those countries. So maybe just in brief before we make the decision, which country or countries we would choose. Thanks. Yes, DDG.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chair. I think first of all to emphasize what could really facilitate a visit to either of those destinations is that in those regions, that's where the DSTI have our international offices located. So we have an office in Brussels who could look after a visit to Belgium. By Belgium, we really mean the European Union, not so much Belgium as a country, but obviously there could be engagement with the Belgian and Flemish parliaments. And then obviously France is an hour's train ride away from Brussels. So we have a center for organization there. And then our second office is located in Asia in Tokyo. So we have an official there who could take care potentially of a visit to Japan and also to China. I think as my colleagues presented last week on our international portfolio, in Paris, of course, we have quite an extensive bilateral science, technology and innovation partnership with France. And we know that the French government, and it's a specific priority for President Macron, has a big focus on science, technology and innovation. A few weeks ago, France played host to this global AI summit. So it's a big focus in terms of the competitiveness of the French economy to investment in science, technology and innovation. So there would be a whole range of institutions within the Paris region, which visits could be organized, many of whom would have a collaboration with South Africa. And then, of course, Paris is also a very important multilateral seat for science, technology and innovation, not least being the headquarters of UNESCO, where we now have a fully fledged ambassador. Some members of the committee may recall our former Director General, Dr. Fuma Jwaga, is now South Africa's ambassador to UNESCO. And UNESCO has a strong focus on science and innovation. In fact, I was there with Minister Nzimande last week for a science diplomacy conference, but Paris also is the headquarters of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, which is really sort of a leading global forum for policy reflection on science, technology and innovation. So there's this rich potential for engagements in Paris. And then if the choice is on Europe, then we would certainly recommend that be combined with Brussels. Honourable members will recall 2 weeks ago, we had a South Africa European Union summit here in Cape Town. Our president met with the presidents of the EU. And what's very rewarding for us in the department, thanks also to the leadership of the minister and the deputy minister, is that in that summit declaration, it's a very strong focus on science and innovation collaboration between South Africa and the EU. And that really covers areas as diverse as marine, Atlantic science, space science, the hydrogen economy. We also know that the European Parliament, located in Brussels, has a very strong focus, a dedicated committee, almost like a sister committee of this committee. So that just said, there's a potentially very interesting package of combining Brussels and Paris. Then in Asia, of course, Japan is recognized global innovation power, long-standing focus after the Second World War, rebuilding its economy through investment in science, technology and innovation. And we have very good bilateral collaboration with Japan in a number of areas, including, again, the hydrogen economy. A big focus on, of course, is also Japan's investment in South Africa through, for example, in automotive industry, and how we collaborate also with Japan in R&D related to the automotive industry to enforce the competitiveness of our industry. I think someone in this meeting mentioned Professor Chilitsi Marwala, earlier today. Prof. Marwala is actually now located in Tokyo because he's director of the UN University. So that could be also an additional engagement. And then of course, China is a rising global science power of the world, very strong collaboration, bilateral between South Africa and China in areas such as artificial intelligence, for example, now. I mentioned in this discussion here our work on global navigation satellite systems, but also science engagement, popularization of science. So that I know for Minister Zimandi is a big focus for engagement with China, because in China one really feels there's like a national consensus on the importance of science and innovation. Interestingly, almost all the Chinese leaders one met are engineers or former scientists, and the minister always thinks there's much for us to learn on that sort of Chinese policy perspective on the importance of science and innovation. So, Honourable Chair, I think on I mean, all those destinations one can make a powerful case, and obviously the committee's prerogative to decide. But whatever the outcome through the DM, I can say we will be ready to support that. We have experience of organizing these visits. Yeah, in my long career, I can recall visits by this committee to Brussels, to Japan, and I think Switzerland. I think those are the 3 visits we have undertaken in the past. And yeah, so we have the experience of organizing these visits. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, DG, acting DG. We requested this for us to have an understanding of what we are going to do, because the minister, in our engagement with him, he has strongly advised that we go to France. And the portfolio committee members said, who have experience on the trip to Japan had also said Japan. So we wanted to have an understanding of what is it that we are going to do? What is it that is there in these countries? So DM, the reason I said you must remain was to also, on behalf of the minister, assist us also before we make a choice as a portfolio committee.
On what the ADG has just said, really for me, the 2 choices that he has put forth, I really agree with him, because even in the EU, they take us, in very high esteem. The flagship that we have with them, it's quite good. But for me, really, I will, if I was to say which one will be, choice number 1 will be Tokyo, Japan. He has said so many other things. I just want to add to one other thing that it will be of great interest even to the portfolio committee. When it comes to the issue of green hydrogen, ammonia, battery fuel cells, and so forth, getting into those laboratories, getting to taste and feel how far they've progressed, filling the cars, the buses on the, you get to feel that is where we want to progress and interact with those scientists, getting into those labs. For me, really, I will really propose that we put Japan as number 1. Yes, we can benefit in so many others. I don't have a problem with, but can we take the Asian part of it as number 1, please?
Members, we've got a difficult choice to make. DM says Japan, Minister says France. Okay, I had so I had a discussion also on how we can structure our trip. So we had a discussion with Sonas on how she has worked on the proposed countries. So there was a view that Japan DM that you are putting first, and then there is also there was a view of France, But the one of France was that we will spend more time on UNESCO, at UNESCO and all these other areas that the acting DG has mentioned, and some of the work that the department is doing there. And then we take a train to Belgium. So we will do 2 in 1. When we were trying to engage on Japan, because I saw that there was serious interest when we were at Carnarvon. We had a session, Yana, and I just listened. I just said, I'm not going to form part of the discussion that we're having, but the portfolio committee members were also discussing on Japan. So previously, when they visited Japan, I think they went to, it was Japan and what? South Korea, yes. They had an opportunity to do 2 countries. It was Japan and South Korea. And the experience that I received from members was quite exciting. I almost changed my mind there on the spot that maybe I must look at what they are proposing. So this is what is on the table now. What is on the table is that I feel strongly that I'm not hearing anyone advocating for China, like, but the countries that are mostly advocated for currently is to France. We will then do both France and Belgium. There's that provision. And then on Japan, unfortunately, they are not, we're not allowed to do both like before with South Korea. But with France, it was, the issue was that we could take a train. So on the cost effectiveness of the entire process, that is what we are presented with. So when we, yes, DG?
Yes, but perhaps just for your consideration, as one cannot fly to Japan directly from South Africa. You could always have a second country en route. It will not add to the cost. So typically places like Singapore and others could also offer additional.
You think flying to where?
Singapore, for example.
Okay, when we are going where?
To Japan.
Okay.
Because there are no direct flights. You will have to unavoidably go through some other country. And that could be an additional visit at a committee's discretion, which will not add to the cost because it's one flight.
Okay, so thank you for that information. So we will then make a choice based on that on the presentation. I think I'm conflicted now. I don't know. Okay, what is your take, Honorable Mazon?
Chair, thanks very much. I've never been quiet on this. My choice has always been Japan. I think it's quite obviously for what we're doing in South Africa and the way we're moving in South Africa. The Japanese model is what we need to be looking at. What DM said about the hydrogen, the battery cells, never mind the clean energy usage in the cities. They've now got self-propelled cars. Instead of when you order your Uber, you get a self-driven car that comes to fetch you. It goes so much broader than what Europe can offer us at this stage. And the thing for me is that we have interactions with the European commissions because they come and they see us quite often. But Japan tends not to come that much because, as we know, it's a long journey, etc. And how are they going to? They can bring us presentations and they can bring us examples of what they're doing, but you actually physically need to see the advancements of their facilities. I think that to me is what is just phenomenal. And if you go on the internet, I mean, there's quite a famous meme. I know a chairperson likes Instagram. So if you go on Instagram, you'll see a meme that says, Japan's living in 2050. And they show you things that Japan's doing that other countries will only be able to do in 2050. As someone who maybe goes to Europe quite regularly, Yes, I mean, we have great relationships with them and they are focusing highly on science, but the entire world is focusing on science. That we must understand. What I think we need to see is people who are not just focused on science, but are actually finished the process. You know, a country where every child has done maths and science, where every girl child has done maths and science, where they have the highest amount of people graduating in science, engineering, and advanced mathematics. I want to know why. I want to know how they're getting it right, and I want to know how we bring it back to our country. But they can come and tell us as much as they want. I think we need to see it firsthand.
Yeah, it's open for discussion. Let us bring our ideas on the table so that we take a decision. Members, over there. Okay. Eh? Okay. Honorable Mchunu, you wanted to add? Are you adding?
No, thanks, Chair. Because we have to take a majority decision. Japan seems to be favored. And let's allow that democratic process and take that one. I'm sure we will find a way of getting to getting information on Germany and Germany and Russell, yes. So we will do that because we also need to be empowered so that, you know, these initiatives that are coming up, the strategy that we've just been talking about, it needs more insight on our side as members, but also more insight that is going to assist us even in the communities, because I'm interested in knowing how far are their communities getting involved in this science and in innovation technology matters. If they are able to bring in young kids to study mathematics, I'm so interested in knowing how do they do it. Maybe we will get the answers which will assist us and assist our youth to be more passionate about the science, technology and innovation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I think Japan it is. Let us, we will then allow the Secretariat to assist us with the preparations. We will, Honorable Boshoff, you don't have I see that the way you're looking at me, I'm closing now.
No, it's fine. I can see good reasons to visit any of these places, so I don't express an opinion.
Okay. No, I saw the way you're looking at me that you wanted to add. Okay, we are going to allow Shanaz to go through the process of assisting us. We'll also try and check what more can be done there. And then DM, yeah, Japan. DDG, we will also liaise on the arrangements and then we would be grateful. Huh? So there's free food there in their restaurants. Honorable Jadu. It looks like we're going to enjoy ourselves there. All right. There's no other thing for this one. Okay, I think this was the last matter that we wanted to deal with so that we make an application. Thank you so much for your extra time. We are done here. The meeting is done. Agent.